Welcome to another online PowerPoint presentation. I am Stephen Teal, Partner and Director of Legal Research at Gardner Roberts, LLP. I have been a research lawyer for almost 30 years. In this presentation, I will be reviewing the Ontario government's announcement that our province is moving into Stage 3 of its economic recovery plan as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic. 24 regions were allowed to move into Stage 3 on Friday, July 17, 2020. It is expected that the remaining regions, which are in Stage 2, will also soon be moving into the third stage. The Stage 3 reopening impacts nearly every business, some of which I will highlight later in this presentation, and allows people to return to many recreational activities that have been shut down through the first two phases. However, some high-risk venues and activities will remain closed in Stage 3, with permission to reopen being required. As Ontario eases back into a full economic recovery, the government's priority remains protecting the health and well-being of residents. Ontario has once again taken a regional approach to its Stage 3 reopening plan, and therefore not all regions have yet been allowed to enter Stage 3. This slide shows which regions have not yet been allowed to enter into Stage 3. They are Durham Region, Haldimand-Norfolk, Halton, Hamilton, Lambton, Niagara Region, Peel, Toronto, Windsor-Essex, and York Region. All of these regions remain at Stage 2. Even though more activities are allowed at Stage 3, a number of activities remain closed. The following businesses must remain closed, and the following activities are not permitted. Amusement parks and water parks must remain closed. Buffet-style food services and dancing at restaurants, bars, and nightclubs is not allowed. Overnight stays for kids' camps remain prohibited. Private karaoke rooms must remain closed. For sports, those sports that have prolonged and deliberate contact are not allowed. Sauna rooms, bathhouses, and oxygen bars must remain closed. And lastly, table games at casinos cannot be played. As noted earlier, however, the Ontario government is willing to work with those businesses that cannot reopen in Stage 3 or that are facing significant challenges in trying to reopen. In order for businesses that must remain closed, they must submit a plan or proposal to government demonstrating that it is safe for them to reopen. Businesses are asked to detail how they will keep patrons and workers safe. Proposals can be submitted at ontario.ca/reopen. A key feature of the Stage 3 reopening plan is that restrictions on gatherings has been eased in the Stage 3 regions. The indoor gathering limit has been increased to 50 people, while the outdoor gathering limit has been increased to 100 people. It should be noted, however, that this easing of the gathering restrictions does not apply to Stage 2 regions. Also, although gathering restrictions have been eased in Stage 3 regions, physical distancing must still be maintained between people who are not within the same household or within a social circle. Meanwhile, there has been no change to religious services, with capacity inside buildings capped at 30%. One of the industries hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic has been the restaurant sector. Restaurants, bars, and nightclubs will now be allowed to offer indoor dining. However, as mentioned earlier, no dancing is allowed in restaurants or nightclubs in particular, and all patrons must be seated. Physical distancing between patrons must also be maintained, with at least 2 meters space between different tables, unless plexiglass or some other impermeable barrier has been installed between tables. While dancing is prohibited, live music and singing is allowed, provided that there is a barrier between performers and patrons. Sports is another activity that is being allowed in Stage 3. Gyms, fitness centers, and community centers will now be allowed to reopen. Again, however, physical distancing must be maintained, and these facilities must ensure that no more than 50 people can gather within. Team sports can be played provided that those sports do not require prolonged contact between players. Amateur sports leagues and recreational sports leagues can now return to play as well, with certain restrictions. A league cannot contain more than 50 participants in total. Thus, once this threshold is reached, the league needs to divide into smaller groups of, again, no more than 50 players. Those players are also not allowed to play against players outside their own league or group. Fans can attend team sports, but physical distancing measures must be maintained. The reopening of personal care services at Stage 2 was important. However, in Stage 2, no services were allowed in the area of the face. This restriction has been removed for Stage 3. However, patrons and workers must still wear face coverings and the appropriate personal protective equipment. A patron can remove his or her face covering, though, for services to the face if needed. For those businesses, it is still recommended that patrons make appointments and that businesses record the name of patrons and all contact information. At Gardner-Roberts, we have created a pre-screening form that contains the necessary contact information which businesses in the personal care services sector should collect. Of course, there are many other businesses, industries, and activities that have been positively impacted by the Stage 3 reopening. These businesses, sectors, and activities include casino and charitable gaming establishments, convention centers, meetings and event spaces, fitting rooms and retail stores, interactive exhibits at museums, attractions, and heritage institutions, libraries, live shows, performing arts, and movie theaters, playgrounds and play structures, recreational courses and instruction, recreational attractions and businesses, and tour and guide services. To get more information, the viewer is directed to obtain a copy of the Ontario government's publication, A Framework for Reopening Our Province, Stage 3, and to consult government regulations. Thanks for watching this presentation. This presentation is intended for legal educational purposes only and is not intended to be relied upon in any manner whatsoever as legal advice. Any opinions expressed in this presentation do not represent the views of Gardner-Roberts. Don't forget to like this presentation and to subscribe to our YouTube channel.